In what kind of nation, in what sort of society does a government require the imprisonment of a young man for 55 years for selling small amounts of marijuana 3 times and for simply having a gun at the same time, but not using or threatening anyone with it? In what kind of criminal so-called justice system does law enforcement use an informant who is rewarded with the dismissal of criminal charges against him to purchase small amounts of pot, then sends him to make a purchase again, then again? So the charges and the outrageous sentences stack up. 5 years for the first offense, 25 years for the second, and another 25 years for the third. It happened right here in the United States, where vote-seeking, opportunistic members of Congress passed minimum mandatory sentencing laws, taking all discretion away from sentencing judges and leaving the ultimate sentencing decision with law enforcement officials, including prosecutors, so they can decide how many charges will be filed and what the sentence will be. And God help you if you want your day in court rather than to plea bargain. It can literally cost you your life in prison to assert your right to a trial. Weldon Angelos, with no prior record, was 23 years old with a loving family and 3 young children. Yes, he violated the law, but no one was harmed. All this because of marijuana laws? According to the federal trial judge, had Weldon been tried and convicted in state court, he would have spent perhaps 2 or 3 years behind bars. But because he was tried in federal court, the judge was required by a statute passed by Congress to sentence Weldon to 55 years. The conservative judge wrote in a sentencing order that the sentence he was forced to impose on Weldon was cruel, unusual, and irrational. He also pointed out that Weldon's sentence for having a weapon at the time he sold small amounts of pot was longer than the federal sentence for an aircraft hijacker, a second-degree murderer, a kidnapper, and a child rapist. In fact, Weldon's sentence, compelled by Congress, is longer than the federal punishment for 3 aircraft hijackings, 3 second-degree murders, 3 kidnappings, or 3 rapes. For Weldon's minor marijuana-related offenses, he received a mandatory sentence more than twice the federal sentence for a kingpin of a major drug trafficking ring in which a death results, and more than 4 times the sentence for a marijuana dealer who shoots an innocent person during a drug transaction. In his compelling sentencing order, the federal trial judge called for a presidential commutation, and that same judge, in congressional testimony, has urged Congress to stop the insanity and to put an end to the draconian, inhumane mandatory minimum sentencing laws. What can you do? 2 things today. First, write to President Obama in care of the pardon attorney, 1425 New York Avenue, Northwest, Suite 11,000, Washington, D.C., and urge him to exercise the broad, unquestionable power he has under the Constitution to right this injustice and commute Weldon's sentence now. Secondly, let your elected representatives in Congress know that you will never support anyone for election who allows the gross injustice of mandatory minimum sentencing to continue. It is cruel, unjust, and irrational, and Weldon's incarceration alone will cost taxpayers over $1.5 million. And that's just in direct costs. It doesn't count the support he would be providing his family, the productivity of his work in our economy, and the taxes he otherwise would be paying. Now multiply that by hundreds of thousands, the number of people warehoused in prisons and jails for nonviolent offenses. The United States has by far the world's highest incarceration rate, with over 2.4 million people behind bars today, and reflecting a tremendous racial disparity that should be deeply troubling to all who believe in equal justice. You can make a real difference by adding your voice to those of others who are standing up as engaged citizens and demanding more sensible, humane, and just sentencing laws.